You're listening to the Chat City interviews from 103.2 Preston FM.
And you're with Chat City on this Tuesday morning, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome into the studio our first visitor this morning, and it's Cllr Peter Rankin, leader of Preston City Council. So Peter, a very good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning to you and your listeners.
I don't know if it's your first visit to us here at Preston FM.
No, I've been before, a couple of times.
Lovely. Well, I would imagine most of our listeners' knowledge of you as leader of Preston City Council will be formed by either reading the local newspaper or short burst interviews, perhaps in local radio. Will they have gained a sound and balanced insight into you, Peter, as leader of the council, and to you as a person?
It's very unlikely, because I think anything that appears in the press obviously is focusing on a particular topic, and the press might want to put a particular spin on it, or indeed they might want to emphasise a particular aspect of that topic. And as far as I'm concerned, I get a quote. So I don't think people get a true idea of what I'm all about, really. And those who've heard me, of course, know that I'm not a native Prestonian. I'm actually born in the north of Ireland, and spent my formative years there. But I came to Preston in 1979, so I feel as if I'm almost Preston born, having been here for 34 years.
Yes. And being born in Northern Ireland and living in Northern Ireland, then, was politics often high on the agenda? Was it something discussed at home and at school?
That's very interesting, because I was quite young when the troubles started in Northern Ireland. The civil rights demonstration started, but towards the end of when the civil rights demonstrations were really making themselves known, as a young person in the sixth form, I was a very questioning person, and a couple of us in our sixth form got involved in these civil rights demonstrations, and very quickly I got pulled in, because I've always been a fair person, and a questioning person, and the sort of questions I was asking, the answers I got, and were really didn't seem to me to fit what I thought was fair. I mean, there was huge discrimination at the time. There was gerrymandering so that people couldn't get elected. And it's interesting, because as I was growing up, and I read my parents' newspaper, which happened to be the Daily Mail, actually, which is nowhere near my political views these days. Yes, but I learned quite a lot, and I remember reading about South Africa and what was happening over there. And I got that sort of parallel, that it was similar-ish to what was happening. And then when I went to university, I was still involved in civil rights, but then I got involved in the anti-apartheid movement, and, huge parallels there between what was happening in the north of Ireland and what was happening in South Africa. Much, much worse in South Africa, obviously, but it's interesting that the right-wing unionists in Northern Ireland very much put themselves in the place of the right-wing Afrikaners in South Africa. They felt themselves to be under siege, and reacted in very similar ways. So that was really, I suppose, how my political views started to form, as a result of seeing things happening that in the world and in my own backyard, as it were, that just didn't seem to be right and fair to people. And that's been my philosophy, right from those years, really, that we should treat people fairly. And if you look around society at the moment, it is very far from being fair.
Yes. So if you'd have been born then at an earlier time and remained in Northern Ireland, do you feel you would have become politically involved in Northern Ireland in bringing about change and uniformity and cohesion?
I think like a lot of young people who went to university at that time, we sought escape. It may seem strange, I've been talking about being involved in activities at that stage. Things turned very nasty, and I think a lot of us just despaired of what was happening. Unlike South Africa, we didn't have a Mandela standing in the wings who was there to rally the people and be mollifying and bring people together. That never happened, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, talking about South Africa, I mean, as we speak, the memorial service is now being held. What do you think is the legacy that Nelson Mandela has left for us?
I think, I mean, there's so many things really that one can think of, and I was listening last night to what Gordon Brown said in Parliament, and I couldn't begin to achieve his eloquence in talking about Mandela. But there's so many facets to the guy. And one thing he said was, "Look, for goodness sake, don't call me a saint. I'm not a saint. I'm a sinner who is trying his best." And I think that sums up an awful lot of us. We've all got our faults, but we're just trying our best. Mandela succeeded where a lot of us, through force of personality, where a lot of other presidents and politicians haven't succeeded. But you think about the way he reached out to his supposed enemies. And I was reading some very powerful stories about the very dyed-in-the-wool reactionary Afrikaners going to see him, and basically these people have gone in to say, now you've been released, we are going to, we don't want to be taken over by the Africans, we are going to take up arms. After a couple of hours with him, they came out completely changed and disarmed in more senses than one, really. Completely won over by the guy. He just had this capacity just to be very firm, very straight with people, but just win people over. And I think the tolerance he showed is a terrific lesson to us all. That tolerance of people with opposing views. But at the same time, this inner core of strength, from what I've read, he had that inner core where people believed that he knew where he was going and he knew what he was about, and he wasn't prepared. Well, he was prepared to reach out, but there were certain things he wasn't prepared to compromise on, such as power. He knew that that the Africans had to have power. They were the majority. But he wanted it to be a fair society, and that's what he sought. That's part of his legacy. I think the other thing that impressed me, just reading what he was saying, one of the things that helped to bring down the apartheid regime was the fact that the children, the African children, went on strike. They didn't go to school. And this had a huge effect across the world. But as soon as Mandela was released, he said, you must go back to school because education is so important. And I think that's another lesson that so many of our children in this country don't realise. They do not realise that education is absolutely crucial.
And when we look at community cohesion, and we look here in Preston, I mean, what are the issues do we face in Preston in sustaining a vibrant, cohesive, multicultural society? I mean, we now have probably over recent years a large, sizable Polish community. There is the possibility, but yet we don't know, that maybe in 2014 we could see more people coming in from Romania, etc. What are the issues that face us in continuing to have a large city that is healthy, vibrant, and spirited in community relations?
Well, I think we have a terrific city. We've got a very diverse community, as you say, and becoming more diverse all the time. I think the great thing about Preston is, and it did bring a lump to my throat last year during the Guild, when you saw in the community procession all of Preston's communities represented. Even ladies from the Muslim community, who many of whom are reluctant to leave their homes, they were out there on the backs of the lorries, and that was a terrific, confident, basically saying to Preston, we are part of Preston, we are making our contribution. And I think that's what I would have to say to anybody who questions their diverse community. I would say everybody is making a contribution. I would say that what is important is that, and I know people feel under threat, particularly these days when jobs are few and far between. People are concerned about people coming in and undercutting them. It is absolutely crucial, and here I have to be party political. Government absolutely must ensure that people are paid at least the minimum wage, which we know that it's not happening. And a lot of these people coming in from other countries, there is this fear that the resident population is going to be undercut. We have got to ensure that minimum wages are maintained, and indeed people are paid a living wage. I'm a great believer in the living wage, and Preston was one of the first authorities to pay and promote the living wage. And basically the living wage is saying this is what people need to live on without having to make up their wage packet through credits from government. And when you think about it, why should government make up people's wages? Employers should pay a living wage. I'm a great believer in that.
Right. And talking about pay, etc., I mean, it's been announced the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, which is the body that oversees MPs' pay and expenses, have recommended 11% pay rise from May 2015. Now, that's on top of a basic salary, MP, of 66,000. Are we really all in it together?
It is. I'm lost for words, really. To the public, all they see is that MPs are awarding themselves an 11% increase. It is actually an independent body that is doing it. But I can't believe that they are doing this because of what people throughout the country are suffering at the moment. Most people haven't had a pay rise over the past few years. We've had an independent remuneration panel looking at councillors' allowances in Preston, and they've actually, once again, this happened last year, where they recommended that I receive an increase. And once again, they've said, look, for the amount of work that you're doing as leader of the council, we think you're entitled to a higher increase. You're entitled to an increase, which brings you up to perhaps the same level as many other leaders in Lancashire. I can't accept that. I really can't. Not in the present condition where we're having to make savings at the council. and people in the community who are working haven't received pay increases, and